Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SportsTech All-Stars Podcast. We're continuing our focus on the Indian sports ecosystem. There's so much happening in that space. We've already had a couple of guests. If you haven't caught the previous episodes, go check them out with Nandan talking about Indian sports from a policy perspective. He's a lawyer, of course. And then we've had a former athlete, Olympian. Shikha talked about her experience coming through the ranks in the sports ecosystem, now working in the sports tech industry outside of India. Today, we've gone into a key part of the Indian youth sports diaspora or the ecosystem is the academies. How does youth sports access sports? And the academies play a huge role in delivering sports to them. And one such academy is the Vijay Bharat Foundation. And I've got a couple of gentlemen here from the Vijay Bharat Foundation, which runs the Vijay Bharat Sports Academy. I've got Eric Hollingsworth, who is their high performance director, and I've got Arnab Das, who is their performance manager. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Brilliant. So maybe, Eric, I'll start with you, because I think we did this last week where we took the Indian perspective outside. I think we're going the other way this time. We've got the outside perspective coming into India, because I take it you're not Indian and your background is from Australia. So walk me through first what brought you to taking on this role at the Vijay Bharat Sports Academy, and maybe a bit of your background and why this opportunity was of interest to you.
Probably a perfect storm, actually. I've been working in Australia for the last 30 years. I'm originally from the UK, so I was brought up in the UK sporting system. I was a professional soccer player, then a professional athlete, and then I met my wife and migrated to Australia and continued my sports career in Australia. And obviously Australia is world renowned for its sporting prowess and the systems that we have built over the years, and I was integral in that at the Sydney Olympics and then onwards from there in various shapes and forms. And then I came out of the Olympic environment and set up a couple of basketball clubs, primarily because of my daughter played the game and I was sitting around. And then when I left the Commonwealth Games, someone asked me what did I think I could do in basketball. So I spent 10 years working in 2 different basketball clubs, starting them up from scratch. And then it coincided essentially with my daughter getting into medicine, and she's busy now studying. She's in her 2nd year, which meant when this was a year ago, she just started, we got this good news. So I'd always planned that when she got in that I would try and challenge myself in a different environment. Within that context, I did search out a number of places around the world in terms of where I could make a difference. And one of the interesting components to this story, and I hope I'm not taking too long, is the understanding of the Australian ecosystem and the difference that someone with my expertise can make or feel that I can make within that. And so I have a very, deliberative principle and philosophy around the impact that I can now make in Australia, given the maturity of the sports ecosystem. And I guess some of it's to do with value. If, for example, I said to you, realistically in Australia, any high performance director who goes to Australia can't make that much of a difference. It's a very refined and skilled system. And so making a true difference through the regulations and all the systems there are very difficult. And so I've experienced that, I've done that, I've understood that. Therefore, the challenge of making a real difference is what attracted me to the challenge of the job in India, where my expertise and knowledge around these things actually makes a difference. We can change so much. We can evolve and move the project forward really quick rates comparatively to Australia. And that's attractive for essentially someone who's quite interested in the whole concept of change. And then the added cherry on the top was that Ahmedabad is trying to get the Olympic Games. And so once again, with my Olympic history, that's a highly attractive proposition. And so that's what led me to India and to try and help VBF realize many of the dreams that sit for the country, for Gujarat and for the foundation. So that's how I ended up as the high performance director here at VBF.
There are very few markets in the world where, let's say, sports is such a growth topic and a growth opportunity. So I think it's, as you said, it's a perfect storm of multiple things. And of course, I've seen from your profile, you've got experience in multiple sports. You mentioned football, basketball, the athletics. So you've had this multidisciplinary approach, which I think probably works well
Yes.
in an academy format. Arnab, you, it seems like, have done a few different things again. From the Go Sports Foundation, so it is funny that we had Nandan, who you probably know from those days, worked at SAI, which is the Sports Authority of India, the Indian Weightlifting Federation. When India's done all right as a category in weightlifting in sports. So you've played a few different roles within the sports world in India. What is your role today at the Vijay Bharat Sports Academy, and what brought you to that role?
So basically, the role at Vijay Bharat that I perform is primarily the strategies that we develop here, with Eric, of course, being a crucial part of it. My job is to primarily help him, assist him.
Sorry, Arnab, is there? Yeah, sorry, there was just like this weird whistle echo. Was anybody else hearing that? No, okay, maybe it was just me. Sorry, Arnab, sorry to interrupt you. I was just making sure that disturbance was in catch. I'll let you start again. Arnab, you're on mute.
My role here as a performance manager primarily, entails, working with Eric, closely, and the strategies that we develop for the academy and for high performance and for development of athletes, and just ensuring their execution timely primarily. And so whether it's looking after the coaches and the roles that they perform, and the athletes, and solving various different problems from a performance perspective. So it's primarily that. And another aspect of the role is, of course, performance analysis. So a lot of analysis of athlete performance history, and trying to identify talents and etc.
Fantastic. Arnab, what would help now is also to set the context of what exactly the Vijay Bharat Sports Academy does. So how many kids are involved, how many sports are covered. It is situated in Ahmedabad, which is a very important sporting city. Of course, it's where the central government has very strong roots. Maybe you can walk through that a little bit about the different ways in which the academy serves the local sports ecosystem.
So we were set up initially as a academy for developing athletes, and we had a lot of athletes from, say, Khelo India, as well as Sports Authority of Gujarat, and we still do. But then, we are in a phase where we are now transitioning also into a high performance academy, an academy that can produce, say, talents for India who can go and perform at the international level, majorly the Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, and the Olympic Games. So that's operationally now, that's what we focus on, is developing talents through the system and pipeline. And that's what, someone like Eric with his international experience, or someone like me with whatever I've worked in India and gained what you would say is the local know-how. We kind of try and work it together to facilitate, that. And what got me into this is this system. What got me involved in Vijay Bharat was, of course, as I said, if you look at most of my previous roles, they've primarily been roles where involved from the back office end, right? Where you're monitoring things from the office. And I always had the desire that I want to also, be part of a role which has more hands-on experience of on ground, where the athlete actually trains, more control, and, more closer look and observation at from that standpoint. So that was the primary reason of coming to and joining Vijay Bharat Sports Academy.
Fair. And just once again, so how many athletes are coming through the academy at any point in time, and how many disciplines, how many sports are you covering?
So right now we have about 130 athletes.
And what age groups?
So the age groups primarily range from between 13, 14-year-olds to 20, 21-year-old. Right now, that's the majority of the age group. In terms
and what disciplines?
Yeah, sports, we have judo, archery, shooting, and fencing. These are the 4 sports we have, and obviously we will be expanding into 4 more new sports in the near future. But right now we operate within these 4 sports.
Fantastic. All right. So hopefully India's next batch of medal winners will come out of at least some of them, not all of them, because we want lots of medal winners. I don't know if your academy can house all of them, but some of them is certainly in those disciplines will come from the academy. Eric, the main reason I guess we got in touch, or the 3 of us are here together for this call, is because I know that y'all are working with Teamworks, who has been a long-time partner of SportsTech X. We've done various content pieces together. In fact, they are involved in the India report, which is what this entire series will culminate in, out in a couple of weeks. I believe that you have some experience with them, and in fact, you all are using them at the academy currently. Can you tell me because Teamworks is a very rich solution, what parts of that solution are you using, and what made you, let's say, implement, a fairly mature solution like Teamworks, but into an academy setting? Like, what is that bump up acceleration that it gives you?
Well, it is a fairly mature situation, and being the old man that I am, I was involved with some of the original platforms in the early days at the AIS of monitoring, etc. So I've obviously seen many iterations of the various platforms over the years, over 20, 30 years. So for me, Teamworks is the natural evolution of this process. And you ask, what do we use? Well, currently we use the hub from Teamworks, and then we use the AMS, and we're also in the process of purchasing the recruiting tool as well. So the idea from my point of view is, and philosophically, it's fairly simple. It's fairly simplistic in its idea. Is that I'm a believer in a multidisciplinary system, and therefore I need to reflect that multidisciplinary philosophy within a platform that can collate and work at higher rates than I can, and analyze, etc., all the information that may come in around high performance. And I love in high performance the idea that high performance is as complicated as the nature of humans. And so you can see how complicated that it could be. So I do need those tools to aid all myself and all the staff to understand high performance. So Teamworks at this point satisfies all the areas currently and in the foreseeable future. And we've got a lot of work to do. And even from its simple iteration in the hub, which is just organizational stuff, ability to communicate amongst ourselves, and then branching out to the AMS, which then involves the athletes in a disciplinary situation, involves the coaches, involves the administration. Indeed, we're involving our finance department into the Teamworks proposition so that they can understand how we spend money on high performance athletes and what it might look like from a budgetary point of view. So it has many ways to help us. And obviously it's world leading at this point in time, in my estimation. And so with my elite perspective and bent on life, the idea is that we, by hook or by crook, we need to install this elite mentality into the academy. And indeed, the first action of the first day or the first couple of days was to get Teamworks across the line, to set the example that we are mean business. If we're going to be competing on the world stage against the powerhouses of Australia, the UK, Great Britain, Japan, France, Germany, we need to at least, at the very, very least, start on a level playing field. And so Teamworks was the answer to what I was trying to project philosophically from an elite point of view, and also from a functional point of view. It could do the things that I need a platform to do in an academy of potentially 8 sports and as many as 500 athletes in our long-term vision.
It's fantastic. And I love that you've got that front foot thinking that, no, we want to go out there and get it. When we're trying to perform and compete at an elite level, you have to have the resources and arm the athletes, also the team supporting the athletes with the right tools so that they can go out and deliver in that moment on that day. Yeah, that is what elite thinking is. Now that you're bringing in Teamworks to help you support this, I'm sure it comes with its challenges. Any tech solution, any implementation will come with challenges. But the Indian market presents its own unique set of challenges, I'd imagine. What has been some of the learnings from that perspective for you? Well, not just implementing Teamworks, but generally around instilling this elite thinking culture into these academies that you're working in.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the diversity of thought and ideas in India around sport and performance, and trying to then bring that into and it mustn't be done this way. We have to organically grow as a partnership in terms of this idea of elite sport. And so therefore the ideas that somehow an Australian way can help India is false. I've convinced everybody in India that is a false enterprise. We have to organically have principles that we talk about that help Indians understand elite sport at that level, and then create the mechanisms that allow that to flourish. And everything is done in an Indian way, not in an Australian way. And that means that we've put Hindi on our teamwork. We have educational situations where athletes of various levels of English, Hindi, even we did try, I think, Arnab, if you remember, we tried to get Gujarati on the teamworks as well. So we have to do it that way. That means there's a more meaningful connection with the tool and the platform that in the long term will give us more beneficial results, more truth and honesty in terms of the performance levels that we want to try and reach. So I think that is a big challenge, and I don't think it's one that we've completely mastered, but we certainly take the steps. And Arnab was giving himself the modest man that he is. He talks about all things local. Well, in my experience and my estimation, he is a master of the local Indian ecosystem, and without his understanding, we cannot move forward as an academy. And so I really lean on that knowledge and understanding around that. And I need everybody within our academy to interpret, convince the way that we need to go forward, that it has to be organic. And so I was very proud. For example, I've been on annual leave for 6 weeks, and I went away and I did very little work in terms of looking at emails and stuff because I was trying to commit some time to my wife. The beauty of doing that was to see how the systems that have been created were able to be implemented by Arnab and the rest of the team and managed. And I didn't leave in a quiet time. I didn't go on holiday in a quiet time. I went on holiday in the midst of all our national championships where athletes are going, trying to win the gold medals at many different competitions all over India. And so the guys handled that situation brilliantly. We attained many gold medals. But what I was more interested in is how the systems works, how teamwork works, how I could visualize what was going on, how I could see the results, how I could see performance trends, I could see who was ill, who was sick, who had a tummy upset before the competition, and what we can do better, how we have to work with hotels, hygiene, and so on and so forth. So it's endless, the process to get us to performance and the coaches. And so that is the biggest cultural challenge for us to do it in that way. And we are on the right track. I firmly believe we're on the right track in the concept of integrating teamwork, developing it through an Indian approach to it, and then moving us forward to being competitive on the world scale.
The Indian way is a very unique way. It is to be done. And also within the Indian way, there are many Indian ways, depending on which part of the country you're in.
Correct.
So that contextualization is super important. And under high praise, I mean, obviously that's why the local team is so important, to bring in that external expertise, which is maybe a few steps ahead of where we are. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in saying that. India, it says on every international competition medal leaderboard that, India is a few steps behind, and we need a bit of help to get higher up that leaderboard. But even those experts need to come in and understand that it's not just a plug and play here. We need to contextualize it. You've mentioned that there are 4 sports that you're focused on right now, and there are some sports to be added as well. You mentioned that there are 4 more. Maybe those are the ones, but where do you think are the biggest opportunities from an Indian sports perspective? Like which are the ones that we're actually going to go out there and win some medals in whether it's an Olympics that we host or any other competition, international championships or whatever. But from your perspective, Arnab, what are those other sports beyond the ones that you mentioned that we could really target?
I mean, to be honest, there's been this view that has been held that Indians can, surpass or do very well in sports which require a lot of technique, for example. So, say a sport like shooting, where we are quite good at, at a global level. So, those are the sports that we've thrived in a way. But then there are also sports like physical sport, like boxing, wrestling, where we've also delivered medals. So I think it's if you look at globally, and look at other countries and how they've won their medals, and I'm talking about successful countries at the Olympic level, they've all targeted a group of, say, maybe 6-7 sports which deliver them medals. More maximum, like 80%. We did a research where about 80 to 85% of medals won by, say, USA, France, most of the UK, most of the top nations came from those 6-7 medals. So it's not just about finding new sports. I think it's about improving in the sports that we already have. So sports like, badminton, we won 3 medals, let's say, back to, with Saina, and 2 medals for Sindhu, right? But each Olympic there are about 10 medals on offer. So if you look at the last 3 Olympics, we've actually won just 3 out of 30 medals on offer. So the idea is to improve that scale, right? Wrestling, we consider ourselves very good. And we are good. We've got lots of talents, but then the conversion rate is, every Olympic is 2 to 3 medals, so on. So how can we increase the number of medals we already won? Shooting has a host of medals on offer, 20 plus medals on offer. This Olympics, last 2 Olympics, we didn't win any. This Olympics, we won three bronze medals. But then the idea is how do we get better at things we are already good at? And obviously there are new sports which we're targeting, like here, for example, at the academy, we have fencing and judo, which are sports traditionally, we would call them as sports that India is successful in. So we are trying to, kind of break that trend and ensure that, there are new sports that we pick up and where we can at least, start with having consistent Olympians and then moving on to Olympic medalists. But then we also have sports like shooting and archery where, India has some history. I mean, shooting, India has some history of success. Archery, we haven't won an Olympic medal, but we've been very close in the past. So even amongst the new sports that we will be onboarding, there are sports which, have a track record. We have a very good track record in, and there are also some sports which we can improve upon. So I think the idea is that having a healthy mix of both. So we're trying to do that currently with the setup that we have. But then, but then eventually what gets you more medals is being better at the sports that you're good at. So which means wrestling, which means boxing, which means shooting, archery. So sports like the hockey obviously we have, and badminton, although we don't operate in badminton currently, but badminton, and even now with the rise in trend in athletics and with the number of medals on offer, if we can improve, we had one Neeraj Chopra, right? So that is kind of a once in a generation athlete. But if we can have more of athletes like that coming through, then we'll have more medals, which will have come in those sports. And together, then, the overall medal tally for India improves.
That's an interesting one. I'm glad you said hockey at the end. I was very lucky to be at the Paris Games to watch India win their bronze against Spain. But again, I was just thinking back to what you said. I think there's a men's and women's, and there's 2 medals. On offer, maybe 6 if you take all the 3 positions. But these sports that you're talking about, the wrestling, the judo, the boxing, the weightlifting is another category, that India's done traditionally pretty all right in. If you train more athletes there, you have, more opportunities at medal. That's an interesting perspective that 80% of medals will come from just 5 or 6 disciplines. Gentlemen, I want to shift tacks a little bit into the tech and innovation part. I mean, we've talked about teamwork from an operational perspective. Eric, I'll start with you. What tools or solutions do Indian athletes or the Indian youth sports ecosystem need to adopt more of to try to drive this medal winning culture that we're talking about? How big is that gap, do you think, between the way that young athletes in other markets operate and adopt tech and innovation versus how it's happening currently in India?
Well, I think that the first place is something that is quite hard to implement, and it's a way of thinking. It's a critical thinking approach to your performance problems. So we can easily say, okay, we've got a performance problem, let Arnab or Eric think about it. But what we have to do is we have to teach, particularly the young people, the young coaches and people coming around, the critical thinking component that gives life to innovation and creativity in the tech space. And once we embed that way of thinking, then it's already demonstrated in India's leadership in computers and tech anyway across the world. So it's there. All I need to do is open the sports community to think in a similar way, and then they'll attack all the problems that may exist in the sport through the tech. And then my job is to facilitate and create resources and education and etc. to grow that to the nth degree. But first I need to get everyone to think. I need to get coaches to think how to solve their problem, what they need, where their shortcomings are, and then come up with the ideas along with our creative data scientists, Arnab, head of sports science and sports medicine. These guys have to think critically and create scenarios that they're trying to fix. And I'll give you an example of that is if we understand, say, for example, from a scientific point of view, as we did in Australia when we created the ice vest, and when we talked about a simple drop in temperature before our guys start the 50K walk allows this much percentage in performance improvement. And so we now then have a say, how do we drop the body temperature of a walker 40 minutes before the start of a race, which gives some sort of competitive advantage. And so away they go. They start thinking, and then the ice fest is born. And similarly, when we created the solid wheel in cycling of how to understand the rules and be creative. And so that critical thinking and solutions to particular performance problems is the key in terms of technology. And then I'll be guided by them. I can join them. You have to create habits around it. How do you innovate? Do you just wait for it by accident? My experience is no. You have to create spaces around that. You have to be habitual, like in any successful process. We have to have innovation meetings once every 2 weeks where we sit down and we put those things till somebody comes up with it, and then we're happy with it, and then we run, and then we come to your company, SportsTech X, and you give us $10 million to develop a product, and then away we go, right? And then there's a business component, a share, etc., etc. So that's where I'd like to see that position go. We're probably not ready yet for that, but it's certainly slowly been introduced into our culture, and over the years as we develop, and we're developing fast, and we're looking unashamedly look for young people when we're looking for that in terms of even our talent development people, talent coordinators, our data scientists. I want young people. I want young people who haven't been sullied by experience or getting pessimistic about things, but have an optimism and an ability to talk about success and solutions to sport. That then means that other places are saying, oh shit, what's going on in India? What are they doing there? Why did they do that? Why are they thinking about that like that? And for example, where I believe, I don't know whether the rest of the world thinks this yet, and I'm not quite sure what your reach is with this podcast, but we have mandated yoga, we have integrative medicine in our recovery systems. We're doing research around this, and it's compulsory for every one of our sports to do yoga in terms of some of their meditation stuff, their warm-up, their cool-down, and we're utilizing it as a competitive advantage, and we're doing the necessary research around it. We do eye training for our archers and our shooters via our integrative medicine and yoga. And so these are the kind of places that, we may not be able to, or I certainly wouldn't have been able to get that across the line in a Western situation. And I'll give you an interesting, funny story, because I believe podcasts should be a little bit entertaining in terms of the process. A doctor who was a subject matter expert from I won't mention the country, there, resigned from his position as an SME in terms of advising, because he didn't necessarily believe what I believed in terms of how integrative medicine can be a competitive advantage, and didn't want to be associated with it. So that's the kind of thing where, and that in itself made me think, great, okay, this stubborn, privileged doctor who thinks that there's only one way to do something, understand that the ways to get performance are so varied, as I said, from whatever our human nature is. I even took that as a badge of honor that we must be doing something right. And so we are pushing ahead with that, and we'll integrate, and our athletes are responding to that. We're getting data, we're doing sleep and how to improve sleep via yoga and the systems of integrated medicine. These are all competitive advantages that will help us create athletes at the elite level.
Brilliant. And I think the biggest key to innovation is open-mindedness. You have to be willing to try new things, and a culture of failure as well. I think that's an important thing, to be try, fail. And who better is, it's a shame, but who better than athletes to be familiar with failure? They fail far more times than they succeed. They'll win 1 or 2 medals in their lifetime, but they'll lose many more races and so on. So I think it's a key part of it. But just to your earlier point, Eric, we don't cut checks that big. So if you have a solution or an idea, maybe let me know, but keep your expectations a bit lower, I would say. Brilliant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. Last couple of questions before we wind this up. Let's look forward to 2025. It's just at the start. So, Arnab, what is coming up for the Vijay Bharat Sports Academy over this year? You want to address, let's say, more students, a few more sports, anything else that you want to talk about?
I think one of the key things we started, and Eric touched upon it, is the usage of data. And of course, while we would talk to teamworks and how has been primarily, we've tried to set that up and make sure it's working. And AMS, the athlete monitoring system, is now our next thing where we've started now collecting data, analyzing data, and sharing feedback. So the usage of that is going to be big. Last year we recruited our first data scientists, and we had to do a bit of convincing to say that no, then this is important. And then thankfully, because we were able to make good use of that resource. We're in the process now of hiring a second data scientist. So I think because especially when I worked in my experience at SAI, we worked with a lot of data, analyzing a lot of things, and all the while I kept thinking we're doing all of these data manually, and there's got to be a better way. There's got to be automation brought in, and that's primarily where I think we're one of very few, I would say, sporting bodies in India that's utilizing data scientists for enhancing athlete performance. So I think a bit more on that can be expected. Obviously, and that's something I'm personally more excited about. And we are obviously a large part of our strategy is, of course, video analysis as well. So while we do data analysis, one of the sports we've introduced, but in some of the other sports, we will be now moving into more comprehensive video analysis. We're using sophisticated tools and systems so that our athletes are better prepared and our coaches have much more prior knowledge.
More data analysis and better video analysis. Great point. Eric, from your perspective, what are you looking forward to in 2025?
Well, one of the big things for us is we are developing a new high-performance center. So one of my parts of my role here has been to develop that, build it, design it, have all the state-of-the-art technology and bells and whistles within that high-performance center. And so that
is it going to be in Ahmedabad?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it will be, on completion, it'll probably be the premier high-performance facility in Southeast Asia. So that's another big target, and it's a big ambition that we have around that to do that, and that's to house approximately 560 athletes, 150 staff, including coaches, 8 sports, plus other commercial activities that will give world-leading aspects, and we hope to attract people from all over the world to some of the facilities that we have and the advanced technology that we'll have in this building. So that's part of our journey. Obviously, the quicker we can get that facility off the ground, the longer we have to embed our athletes, and then hopefully, and the big ticket item from my point of view, which I try to keep everyone focused on, is winning the bid for Ahmedabad, and that we will know something around that mid to late next year. And of course, if we are successful in that one, that will see the what I call the big question, having already experienced it with Sydney and what it did for Australia in terms of how we approached high performance sport. And I call it the big question, which is simply how many medals can we win? Mm-hmm. And then what does that mean to everybody? And what are we prepared to do to win those medals? That creates a momentum and a tidal wave or an avalanche of people wanting to be involved. Those who are already involved are stimulated, motivated to do India proud. And the speed at which we will then do it, which I like again, which is one of the exciting parts of sport, will be on the clock. And when you're on the clock, we start to then become more efficient. We work better. We develop things quicker. We collaborate better. And all of those things are so exciting in terms of the chase and the pursuit of excellence and elite performance in terms of medals. So for me, those are the exciting things that are coming up in the next year and a half.
World-class facility with elite thinking, with clear ambition, incorporating layers of, let's say, Indian elements like our yoga and our languages, and contextualizing it well. Sounds like a pretty good recipe for success. I'm looking forward to. Well, and with there's so much momentum around this 2036 bid, if it's not 36, if it's 40 or whatever it is, but there should be one, and India needs something like that. So fantastic that you gentlemen are working hard towards it. Thank you so much for taking the time. Before I let you go, I have one last quick question to ask you. I always end the podcast with this one. Eric, to your earlier point, I think a podcast needs a bit of fun. So I want to know from you, what has been your favorite sporting moment? Eric, I'll start with you.
There's a lot on the list there, but I will say I'm a fanatical Rafa Nadal fan, so I will take any of his 22 Grand Slam wins as my greatest sporting moments.
Fantastic. That's a good one. The any of 22 is a pretty solid flex. Arnab, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, as Eric said, there are many. I think I'll touch upon two that are very, close to me. One from a very personal level, because I enjoy football a lot. Edwin van der Sar saving Nicolas Anelka's penalty, and United winning the Champions League final.
As a United fan, I'll take that one. I'll take that
Oh, I
one.
can't believe you're a United fan as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Two very sad men in this podcast right now.
But
Let's not
then,
go there. We need these memories. That's why we need these memories.
but then just to add on to it quickly, and another incident that inspired me was 2008 Abhinav Bindra, when he won the gold, and the way he just fist pumped and India's first individual gold medal. Yeah, that. Yeah,
Great moment. What a perfect way to end the podcast. And an Indian gold, on an Indian gold moment, and hopefully y'all will help us deliver many more. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time.
Thanks.
No problem. Pleasure.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for another episode. That was fun to learn more about how this elite mindset is coming into Indian sports. So encouraging to hear. Plenty more coming on the series focused on Indian sports, including our first ever Indian Sports Innovation and Investment Report. Stay tuned. See you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to the SportsTech All-Stars Podcast with Rohan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out SportsTechX.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at SportsTechDB.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.